All right, here we go. Overdrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes and Frankie Corrado in here. So hot outside. Insanely hot. And I guess the reason I bring that up is because last week it was like really kind of cold at the start of the week. Raining, it was like 12 degrees. And I wasn't prepared for that weather, but it allowed me to understand, like, it's coming, right? Like, this last week of August might as well be September. Like, we should reestablish the final week of August as, like, pre-September.
Everyone's checked out, and everyone says the same thing. Well, summer's over.
Summer's over.
Yeah.
Like, if it's already over, then why are we doing this week?
Right.
Like, if it's not officially a part of summer, why is this still in August? This should be pre-September this week because everyone's preparing for school or, getting back into the swing of things, or the NFL's return, the NHL's return, right? I'll bet you there's a lot of Leafs in town.
Yeah.
I would assume there's probably a lot of Leafs, probably skiing, maybe up in Muskoka. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be anywhere at this point.
Everyone's back in town. It's going to get going. It feels like it's been a little slow to get going. I just, like, one thing you guys talk about all the time on this show, and the O-Dog always brings this up when it comes to your putting, is to get that broom putter. Like Adam Scott. The next time he says that to you, you have to tell him to beat it, because that putting display
Killed
that we
him
saw
yesterday.
this weekend, especially yesterday.
Yesterday was brutal.
Horrible.
He wins that tournament running away if he hits those putts.
What do you think he does leaving the golf course there with that putter? Like, that's got to be automatic. Snap it over your legs. See you later. Go get yourself a mallet with some kind of, like, Super Stroke Jumbo. And is that the O-Dog calling you?
Jeff O'Neill's calling me right now. Give me a close-up here. Jeff O'Neill. It's his show. 402. This idiot is calling me. Like, I don't know if he's hearing it, although we're on delay, so there's no way he heard you just reference his name. This buffoon who works on the show is calling me while the show's on. And here's the thing. Next week, he'll be back. He's back on Tuesday. He and Noodles will be back. We're all back for, like, the next 10 months. Someone will call him the first week, and he'll be like, look at this. Look at this idiot calling me. Well, don't you know I'm working?
Every day, 4 p.m., I'm on the show.
That's a first. He should know better. Obviously, something just came up where he's like, I should call this guy.
Yeah, he got a deal on broom putters. And
He might have got a deal on broom putters.
Yeah, because no one wants to use them anymore because they saw Adam Scott chop it up with that broom putter.
And you know what's dangerous about that is, you're right, it's very conducive to snapping. It's like you could so easily snap that putter. So easily.
Wouldn't you want to after that? Dude, he didn't even hit the hole on half of those putts.
Yeah, it was brutal. I felt for the guy because going into the weekend, he was in the lead. He's playing great. And, yeah, his broom putter. And it sounds like more of a chirp when you establish it's a broom putter.
Because it is.
Right?
It's a glorified broom.
I know.
That you would sweep your garage with.
I know, but no one says blade putter, mallet putter. It's just putter. But when it's so obnoxious and looks so stupid like the broom putter, you have to establish it's the broom putter we're talking about.
And the other thing that bothered me all weekend, they had to call him 44-year-old Adam Scott.
They made sure of it.
Every time they brought him up, oh, there's 44-year-old Adam Scott. Like, the guy, he's not a relic. Like, he's not a fossil.
I know, you're right.
He was world number one for a significant amount of time.
And he's played himself into the President's Cup.
Yes.
Because he's been competitive all year. He's top 10, I believe, going into East Lake this week. He's not chasing the field. He probably won't win it, but he's not chasing the field. And you're right. They made a point out of talking about this guy like he should be on the Champions Tour.
Yeah, like some kind of dinosaur.
Yeah. Like, hey, here's, old man Adam Scott still, hey, he really got that one.
Because he's got the broom.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Dude, he's got the broom and he's going like this.
And he wears beige on beige on beige every single round, basically. He wears that Uniqlo gear. I think I'm pronouncing it properly. And he wears the same gear every single time.
God, man.
It's beige on beige on beige with a broom putter. And yet he crushes the ball off the tee still.
Oh,
he crushes the ball.
Beautiful swing. He was striped. If he could have made a putt, he wins that tournament going away. But the broom putter's got to go. And any talk of a broom putter in your future has to go. It's done.
Yeah.
No more broom putter. It's off the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to go. It's got to go. I wish I answered that phone call now. I should have answered and put him on speaker.
Curious as to what would have been said there.
Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, why didn't I answer that?
I don't know.
Maybe call him up and just, and give him a call. Call the O-Dog and just say, what do you want? Like, we're on the air here.
He's probably got a vent about Adam Scott.
It could have been an Adam Scott thing. Maybe he was getting off the course. I don't know what he's doing right now. But anyway, Dave Naylor's going to join us a little bit later on. Saw Dave. We were doing some SportsCenter stuff. Some NFL news. CeeDee Lamb getting paid.
Did he ever?
He's getting paid. Outside of Justin Jefferson, he is the highest non-quarterback playing player in the NFL. So he's making a fortune. Tons of guarantees. What I always find confusing about these negotiations is they're so public, especially with a team like that, and the figures we're talking about. CeeDee Lamb, stud wide receiver in Dallas. They got a long history of stud wide receivers, right, from Michael Irvin to Terrell Owens, and now it's CeeDee Lamb. And Jerry Jones being who he is, and he's basically negotiating through the press, and he's talking all the time. What took so long? Like, what? You knew this was what it was going to be. You know, I'm sure that CeeDee Lamb understood I'm not getting Jefferson money, and I shouldn't. Jefferson, in my opinion, and I think in his opinion, and clearly he's conceded this because he accepted the deal, Justin Jefferson deserves to be the highest paid wide receiver in the league. I don't know who's going to throw to him this year. I think it's Sam Darnold. I can't imagine they're going to get their bang for their buck in Minnesota. In fact, I know they won't. But still, so you know it's under that. Pay the guy, you know? And you got Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams and San Fran that are still going through this. You know you're going to end up paying them about what you're going to pay them. Just figure it out on both sides. Get into camp. We're playing next week. The NFL starts in like 9 days.
That's usually this is what's been happening, though. When it's your time, you're going to get paid, and you're going to get paid more than the next guy, and it's happened to quarterbacks, and it's happening to running backs, and now it's happening to wide receivers. I just find it funny that prior to this, there was talk that, oh, Jerry will play it out. He's okay. Like, you know what? He'll find another one. Then he gets the contract that he got. So, I don't know, like, how much money did you actually save by doing this? And you just, as much as we think that maybe the teams have the power, the next guy up gets his money. That's what's happening. That's the trend, and everyone seems to be getting their money when it's their turn.
It's like there's a slotting system, and it's like what you see in drafts now in every league, where every draft pick has a price. Like there's not a gut instinct like, oh, I really want that third overall pick. I'll give you 5 first-rounders. It's like that third overall pick is equal to 2 first-rounders, a second, a third. Like they're all working based on some analytical grid, and it's generally the same thing when it comes to price points. Like who are you? How valuable are you? What are your numbers? What position do you play? What's your age? That's what it's going to be.
The formula.
There's generally a formula. There's generally a formula. And really what it comes down to for owners, and there is an element of this with players, if you really want to be somewhere, you might have to bite the bullet a little bit, right? And every league's a little bit different in terms of a hard cap, a soft cap, you know, whatever it might be, whichever league it happens to be. But generally it comes down to the owner and then the GM by extension deciding, do I really want this player or not? Does it fit in with everything else we're spending money on? Does it fit in with our short-term and long-term plan in terms of winning? And with CeeDee Lamb, it was so obvious he wasn't going anywhere, and they needed him to play. And I think the same thing applies here. Less so with Ayuk because I thought he was going to be traded. Trent Williams, they need Trent Williams. That's the best left tackle in football, if not one of the 3 or 4 best. And if you want Purdy to work, if you want McCaffrey to work, if you want that offense to click, you need Trent Williams. And he knows it, and he knows they're going to pay him. So what are you waiting for?
But the thing with Ayuk is he's not the primary target.
No.
He's not, like, you know what I mean? If he's not there tomorrow, that's not going to change that team. He's a good player. And he's got a certain skill set. But outside of that, it's like, that's not your marquee guy. That's not what CeeDee Lamb means to the Cowboys. That's not what Jefferson means to the Vikings. So I don't know. I guess you're going to try and pull your leverage if you think you have it. But I thought, like, he is what he is.
Yeah.
He's your third guy. He's your third target.
That's it. Good player. Good player. You want him around. He boosts your team for sure. But is it a luxury play? Like, and that's where you got to get ruthless. You got to get ruthless with every budget. You got to make decisions, right? And it's going to happen. You talk about the teams in Toronto. We've been talking about it endlessly with the Leafs. You want to keep everybody. You love everybody. Awesome. You can't keep everybody. And the formula doesn't work. And at some point, individual players are going to price themselves out of whatever that plan is going to be. the Blue Jays, it's the same thing. They got some positive news over the weekend. Sounds like BIchette is going to return at some point this year. I'm not sure why. They're playing better. If they could play the Angels every day, they'd be the 27 Yankees. Yeah. They love playing the Angels. They are the best team in baseball when they play LA. When they play the Angels, they're the 27 Yankees.
Yeah.
And yet, Bo's a pro and he's getting paid and he wants to play. I do wonder, though, like the cynic in me, because there's so much kind of smoke around BIchette and his inevitable exit out of Toronto. That's what's being reported. Has no interest in signing here long term. Has 1 year left on his deal. Does he feel like he's got to get back, get hot, so he can get out this offseason? Because if you're the Blue Jay, we've spent so much time talking about Vladdy, and Vladdy's numbers are off the charts. Like, they're off the charts. You look at it across the board, what he's doing in terms of batting average, in terms of home runs, in terms of power, OPS, getting on base, everything. He's put himself in an incredible position. And that gets back to our conversation from a few minutes ago. Do you want to pay him or not? Like, is what it's going to cost is
his
what it's going to
numbers
cost.
up. You know exactly what it's going to cost. And you've known what it's going to cost him roughly for the last 5 years, maybe more. Like you forecasted this.
Right, based on what you're hoping he'd become, and that's what he is right now.
Yeah.
What you're hoping he would become is what he's been doing for 3 months. And he's done it multiple times over the last, 4 or 5 years. So you got to make a call. Put up or shut up. What do you want to do with Vladdy? Bo's a different story because Vladdy, by all accounts, wants to stay and wants to be a Blue Jay for a long, long time. If Bo doesn't want to be here beyond next year, how do you trade him after the season and a half he's just had? Dude, what is his value? What do you do with BIchette?
The down year is still the down year, right? Like, even if he comes back and he plays the last, however many games are left, it's still going to be considered a down year. But whichever team is acquiring him or whichever team he hopes is trying to acquire him is going to spin it as, oh, he showed us something at the end of the year. We know that this is the real Bo, and what we saw the previous half season or 3/4 of a year, that's not the real BIchette. He was banged up, he was hurt, but now we saw something. That's all he's doing, just to give whatever team is out there that wants him, and I'm sure there would be a lot of teams that would want his services for the right price, just to give them that little sliver of hope that it's like, This is the guy you're actually acquiring, not the guy that had the down year.
Right. And he's got 1 year left, cost certainty with that, but it's not going to be a Juan Soto sweepstakes. That wasn't going to happen even if he was healthy and had a great year. They weren't going to retrieve what, the Padres or the Nationals got for Soto. But they got to make a call on that. And I think, that's going to possibly indicate where they really are with, how genuinely they believe they can be competitive next year. Because if you're trading Bo because you're worried he's going to leave for nothing, that's a futures play. That's not we'll kick that, we'll deal with that when we have to. We need him to help us win next year and save jobs. They move off him and bring in, prospects or bring in maybe some ready-to-play players, but not guys of his status in terms of like established major league guys who, when he's on his game, is a legit piece. That would suggest they're actually looking beyond next year, which might be a good thing. In fact, I would argue it is. It wouldn't be desperate. The desperate play would be like, screw it, we got to bring this guy in. Whatever happens, even if he's not going to stick around beyond next year.
It just goes against everything that they've been saying, where, it's next year, and they've put expectations on next year. Meanwhile, they should have tried to keep it open-ended, but no one was going to accept that. Right. No one was going to accept, we got a couple years here to play with. They don't have a couple of years to play with. They just had 9 years to play with. So they probably try to convince him or, give him a hard sell on, we need you, we want you here, and the future is going to look better here for you and the team. But I don't know. I don't know if that does the trick.
That's going to be a big story next year, though, if BIchette returns. Are you going to stay? Do you want to stay? Like, it feels like we do that all the time in this city. It's just nauseating. It sucks. Kawhi, even when they won a championship and immediately it was like, are you going to stay? Like, hey, great job. Thank you for winning a championship. But putting that aside, are you going to stay? Do you want to stick around? And he didn't. And he left. And, with Matthews, we've done it at different times. With Willie, we did it last year. I suppose we're going to do it with Marner and Tavares to an extent this year, I would think. Might do it with BIchette, maybe do it with Vladdy next year if they're both unsigned long term. It's just the one constant in Toronto is worrying about a player possibly leaving. That's what we do better than anybody.
Well, yeah.
We do it pretty well.
Also, the only Canadian baseball team is in Toronto, so by default it's Toronto. Same with basketball. Like I think that I'm sure Edmonton fans would be talking about Draisaitl. Hey, you gonna stay?
Other towns do it well too,
right?
I don't think they do it as well as us, man.
All-star caliber.
We do it as well as anyone in the city of Toronto. No one can beat us when it comes to anxiety about players maybe leaving and not wanting to be here. All right, Dave Naylor is going to come in studio.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Chad Kelly's back. Nathan Rourke, man, the Lions, all they do is lose ball games now. All they do is lose. We'll get his takes on that and a number of things in the NFL. As again, we're just over a week away from go time. My Partsy Al's brother and I, we are cooking up serious action for week one, and we intend on doing that throughout the season. Luke Wilson, Jeff O'Neill, be warned. That's probably why O called, because he was trying to call Luke, because they're trying to get on the same page because they're worried about Al's brother and I. That's a fact. Hayes and Bro, we're cooking up serious winners this year, and we can't wait for it. NFL right around the corner. Dave Naylor in studio next. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado, the nail gun himself, Dave Naylor, will be in here.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I know he's in the building. I was taping stuff with him earlier. And Davis Sanchez, who is soon to be one of the busiest guys in Canadian broadcasting. He's already incredibly busy because he's doing the CFL. But CFL, NFL, FanDuel stuff, Chaz is basically everywhere.
Yeah, he gets the crossover, right? Like he's got to do both at the same time.
Played in both leagues.
Yeah, good.
I guess you can be, if you play in both, man. That's multiple alumni jackets.
Yeah.
On both sides of the border.
2 different styles of play.
I love that.
I wonder if you ever had a game end on a rouge.
That's a wild scene, man. Like, it's nothing up. It says something about that rule and the way it's applied that even in the Canadian Football League, CFL fans still get riled up by it, right? Especially if you're on the wrong side of it. Yet it's been a part of the rule book, like, as long as we've known. I mean, the rouge is the rouge. There's nothing you can do.
It just doesn't you don't see a lot of games decided on a rouge.
Just get it back there, man.
but the rouge happens. Like, I have turned on TSN and there's a CFL game on, and I look and it's 1-0. And I think to myself, for a second, I'm like, did they make a mistake with the score bug?
No.
But then you remember, it's the rouge.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has an opinion on it. Like, okay, it's unique to the CFL. I got no problem with that. Maybe we can adjust it so that you can't win the game on the rouge.
Is that
seems
reasonable?
Like a
reasonable conversation. Yet, if it applies to every other element of the game, like you said, you can start. You could be a minute into the game and it can be 1-0.
I've seen it.
Absolutely. How many times I've tuned in and it's been 4-1. And that's what I actually love about the CFL. I'm like, it's 4-1 right now.
Amazing.
There was a field goal and a couple of rouges.
Yeah.
And it's 4-1.
But I understand the spirit of the
along.
rule. Like, the spirit of the rule essentially is to incentivize the other team to want to run it back.
Absolutely.
Right?
Which can be very beneficial. Like you talk about seeing that kind. We've seen guys take it to the house.
Yeah.
But it's a very rare scenario where you get that. I don't think it helped that it was Toronto that benefited from the rouge and it was Saskatchewan that didn't.
Right.
Like you have like the heartbeat of the Canadian Football League on the wrong side of the rouge. And then here in Toronto, the X is going. People are fired up. Hey, rouge, all right. Chad Kelly's
Carnival's going on, and we're
like,
winning games on a rouge.
Yeah, you got like Blue Rodeo playing down at Budweiser stage. You're like, hey, we got a rouge down there. All right,
people are stuck on the Ferris wheel, and there's a rouge happening right below them.
Yeah, but it's very Canadian Football League. I like that. I appreciate having the history that it has. Come on in, Dave. And keeping it established. Like, remember when the rumors, and I guess there were pretty substantial reports were coming out of the CFL and the XFL merging a couple of years ago. Good to see you, Dave. Hey. We're just talking about the rouge to end a ball game. And, at the time when the CFL and the XFL were talking, and you can speak more to this, Dave, than we can, my understanding was if that was coming, it was not, the CFL rules were basically going to die.
Yep.
They were going to die, which means the rouge was going to die. It's so Canadian, and it's a part of its history. And what are you going to do? I mean, I think it's, if you're a Riders fan, you hate it, but it could have easily been, the shoe on the other foot.
My favorite tweet about that came from former most outstanding player Travis Lulay, who now I believe lives in Oregon or Washington, somewhere out there. And he said, just wait till they find out you can win with a punt.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
They could have punted that ball into row 10.
Right.
And the argument I used to make when people would say to me, it was always like, well, I love the CFL except, or I can't stand the CFL because.
Right.
And my comeback used to be, I don't know that I've ever seen it. Like all the years I covered CFL football, I don't ever remember a team lining up with no time left, missing a field goal, and they won it on the, well, it happened. Right? And it does happen.
And it was the visual of like you.
Oh, the celebration.
Something.
We got it.
That's the best. It's like we did exactly what we came here to do.
Hey,
a rouge
never in doubt.
But it's
never in doubt, baby.
It's like the most forgiving country in the world.
Yes.
Has a rule that if you miss a field goal, you can still win a game.
We'll still hook you up.
Yeah.
We'll hook you up.
I mean, look, Farhan was making the take, and I kind of agree with him, is you could modify this rule just slightly to make it a lot more palatable. And it's just basically, if you miss a field goal, it can't go at the back of the end zone. The other team has to have the opportunity to play it. Because in that scenario, what they can do is kick it out. And there's a game between Toronto and Montreal about a little more than 10 years ago that ended that way. Like, I think it was Montreal lined up, missed the field goal. Toronto grabs it in the end zone, punts it out. Montreal grabs it, punts it back in. And I was sitting with an American watching that game for the entire thing. And when that exploded, they just turned to me and said, what am I, like the whole thing looked like football for 59 and a half minutes. And then it like broke into a rugby game in the last bit of it. So I actually like that part of it. So I would just refine it and say, hey, if you kick it out of like the NFL did with his kickoffs, there's no fun in watching a ball sail into the stands and penalizing somebody for that.
Adjust the rule.
Adjust the rule.
What was the biggest story for you out of the weekend? Chad Kelly's return and the Argos getting a win, or Nathan Rourke, who statistically was much better, but still the Lions are really struggling.
Yeah,
there.
three turnovers.
Yeah.
I think you look at Nathan Rourke's steps, week 1 to 2, massive difference.
Yeah.
Right from the opening bit, he looked at, like, I don't know if I've ever seen a player perform an apology like Nathan Rourke did after that first game. I mean, and just looking into his eyes, I was like, yeah, he's going to be better next week. And he was. And I think the next step is now, trying to get rid of the turnovers. Now he put up the yardage. But I thought Chad Kelly had a much better chance of having success. He wasn't in 4 playbooks, 3 of them in another league. Mm-hmm. He wasn't here, there. He's been in contact with his coaches, been in contact with teammates, had one playbook. It's the same offense. Most of the offensive personnel is the same offensive coaches. And like it was funny because his numbers didn't look great until after the game. Like if you just watch the eyeball test, I wouldn't say Chad Kelly was great. But you look at it at the end of the game, he had a 300-yard passing game. They won. I think it was probably about what you expect from him.
Should Montreal be nervous? Are the Argos now in a position like we saw what they were a year ago? I mean, we know what Montreal did to them in the playoff game. You talk about turnovers; it was disgusting. But should Montreal possibly think, "Oh, here we go"?
Yeah, because Montreal's been good, but they haven't been dominant. I say not dominant in the scoreboard in the win column. I was just doing some math this morning. Montreal lost to the Argos on about September 15th last year, around there. They haven't lost a game since that their quarterback started and finished. They're 18-1 since mid-September last year because they went 6-0 they went 8-0 down the stretch, and now they're 10-1. And the only game they've lost is one where Cody went out before halftime with a hamstring injury. The Argos had the pick 6 and the return touchdown.
Crazy.
So 18-1. Look, I think Montreal's a really good team, but the point is that they're not beating people every week by 21 points. And yeah, I think the Argos, the fact that they kept their heads above water basically with defense and special teams and no vertical passing game. And now you've added Chad Kelly to them. Yeah, I think Toronto is a force in the East, no question.
Okay. I like it. Dave Naylor joining us here in studio. We're earlier in the hour, we were talking about this CeeDee Lamb contract where he just got paid a boatload of money by Dallas. Outside of Justin Jefferson, no one's making more money than him at the wide receiver position. No one's making more money,
why did they draw it out like that?
But that's exactly what we were talking about. Like, there's a slotting process. He's not getting Jefferson money. And obviously, by CeeDee Lamb signing this today, he's probably understood that the whole time. Yeah. I'm not asking for that necessarily, but it's got to be a peg underneath, which it basically was. Why does this draw out like this? Like, it's the same thing. Ayuk's going to get paid. Trent Williams is going to get money. Like, the Niners are going to say, we need you, and we're going to pay you. What are you waiting for?
It doesn't make any sense in a world where, like, water only flows downhill, right? Like, salaries only flow upwards. There's no reverse coming in the market in the NFL, anything like that. And I know it's always like the only reason teams would ever wait, and any team ever should wait, is they think they can lower their entry price by doing so. And there's absolutely no evidence that happens, right? I don't know what the last situation was that was. And And in a way, the dollars, and I know like 136 million, what really we should be talking about is percentages. What percentage of the cap are you making, right? Because if you were to follow the quarterback contracts, from when they hit 35, 40 million right up to today, we're in 55. I guarantee those numbers follow a percentage of the cap, right? So what Love is getting or what is going to be equivalent to what Joe Burrow got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
They're just doing the percentage.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. How are you going to negotiate off that percentage? Because it is what it is.
And the whole league plays by the same rules.
Yeah, I don't get it.
The thing that's strange too is it's the Cowboys.
Yes.
Like this is not a stingy team. You know what I mean? If they save a couple $1 million a year here, that's not changing things. That's not moving the needle for the Cowboys. And to your point, like everyone just kind of gets in line to their money. Jerry Jones, as powerful as he is, he can't change that. You know what I mean? So like the players have the leverage now. The numbers are there. It's just you kind of just slot it in. If Jerry Jones can't do it, who's gonna change it?
Well, it's funny. I wonder sometimes whether, like, remember 30 years ago when Jerry Jones had Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and all those guys in the defensive line, and my memory is that he re-signed them all to deals that were well past their prime and basically dug a hole for the franchise by doing so, by falling in love with everybody and locking them up kind of long term. And that whether that whole experience is kind of like, well, I'm never doing that again. So now I'm going to kind of wait till I absolutely have to do something. Because it sort of feels that way like he was on coaches, that he was sort of a trigger guy on coach. And now he's gone the other extreme. He's the most patient guy on coaches. So it feels like Jerry's kind of bouncing from one extreme to another.
I just feel like he wants the publicity and he wants the public fight. And even though he probably knows he can't win, like you just said, because he's been down this road before. Ezekiel Elliott, was that 5-6 years ago, famously was sitting in Cabo and was like, call me when you're ready. And he won. Like eventually Jerry had paid him what he was going to pay. Emmitt Smith was the most famous one.
Dude, run the risk of not having any skill and then see what happens. And then see what your fan base says. You have star players. You got to pay them.
And you're going to pay him. And he ends up with, I think, $34 million, per year in guarantees. And I think Jefferson's at 35 and St. Brown and Tyreek Hill around 30. Like that's where it was going to be.
That's where you're never going to get a player, an agent who stands and says, that's too much. We're going to play for 29. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So I don't know what's gained other than the fact he hasn't been in camp all.
Well, exactly. How far does that put you behind the eight ball? I don't know because, again, he knows the quarterback well, and I think he trusts Dak. Now you get a week. There's a long runway. The NFC is an interesting conference to try to figure out because the Niners are, the prohibitive favorite. Yet they're going through this with Williams. They're going through this with Brandon Ayuk. McCaffrey's had the calf strain, which can be terrifying. Like if that lingers or blows out, that changes.
His usage, the way they use him.
Changes everything.
Yeah.
I think the Lions are good. I think the Packers are good. The Eagles, I don't know. What they did down the stretch last year terrifies me. And Jason Kelsey's not there anymore. I wonder how that affects, the tush push and everything. And the Cowboys, I don't know who's going to step in because someone's going to step in. Will the Rams do it? Will Seattle possibly do it? Will the Bears take that big step? There's going to be a team that comes out of nowhere that I bet you finishes top 3 in the NFC that we didn't see coming. And I'll bet you it'll happen.
And I bet you're pretty happy if you're a Packers fan.
I love where they're at.
You know what I mean?
I know I'm biased, but I love where they're at.
Because where was the lull? There was no lull there.
Yeah.
Like there was an opportunity for other teams to kind of jump in here and say, okay, it's our time now. And, outside of Detroit, having a push and, turning a corner, I don't know. It's not like we've had years of Packers downtime. Now Jordan Love's a really good quarterback.
He looks great. Like I'd be curious to ask Bears fans, truth serum, not publicly or not on Twitter where you feel like you got to be a hero. True serum, dead honest, anonymous vote. Caleb Williams or Jordan Love, who would you rather have? How do you think the vote would come in?
It would be hard to get the bias out of that question.
Yeah, and they bought into Williams.
But if you take out the bias, it has to be Jordan Love.
It should be.
Because Caleb Williams is still a mystery.
Yeah.
Like he's done everything at the collegiate level. And I was in Chicago last week, had a great chat with their quarterback coach, Kerry Joseph, the former CFL quarterback guy I covered in a couple of spots. And I was asking him, like, how do you coach Caleb Williams? Like, what are you showing the most pro-ready prospect we've seen in 20 years? And basically he was talking about just situations that he would not have seen in college. They're just things that no matter what defense he was facing, what circumstance, you're not going to see this. You are going to see it in the NFL. But again, think of the excitement every year about the quarterbacks that are drafted in the first round.
Mhm.
And you watch them at the combine, you watch them throw at pro days, and everybody's excited. Now, fast forward 3 years and look at that class and see how many guys actually hit, right? And guys that, I mean, people forget, with Trey Lance was 3rd pick of the draft.
Yeah.
3rd pick
And
of
that
the draft.
was like Kyle
Right?
Shanahan can do no wrong.
Yeah, 3rd pick of the draft. Absolutely. So, look, I think Caleb Williams is going to play. Well, I watched him in practice last week, but again, not the lights aren't on. I would 100% take Jordan Love because he's done it. I don't know how you could go away from it.
I totally agree. And he's not like in his 30s.
No.
He's 25 or whatever. Like he's right there in terms of the age gap. And he's been tutored. He's in a better system and a better culture and a better program. Let's call it what it is. Like
Right.
the Bears have just not been a championship relevant
Right.
team in a long, long time.
Right.
Where the Packers pretty consistently are. He's
The
got
only knock on him in college was he smoked marijuana, which shouldn't be a problem in the NFL. For his
exactly
future.
didn't affect Larry Tunsil.
Fit right in.
And I think he'll be totally fine when he gets there.
Dude, you mentioned Trey Lance. Like, I think there's always this notion around the Niners and the players who play there, like Brock Purdy or whether it was Jimmy G. It's like, if you're under a Shanahan offense, you just need to be in there and it's all going to be good. Trey Lance, 3rd overall pick.
Yeah.
It was not good.
Right.
And now he's gone to Dallas, and it's preseason, but the guy's throwing like 5 picks a game.
5 picks
yeah.
over the
So,
weekend.
so there's something to be said for a guy like Brock Purdy, who it's not just a plug and play. Like the guy's actually got some game.
Yeah,
Or else you would be Trey Lance.
Well, and the thing is about Brock Purdy, and I was using this as a bit of a parallel with Nathan Rourke, and any quarterback who's undrafted or taken in the 7th round. Because I used to get the question about Nathan Rourke, why won't anyone give him a shot? Nobody gives guys like Nathan Rourke a shot. No one gives guys like Brock Purdy a shot. What happens is the depth chart melts down in front of you,
right.
with guys getting hurt or playing horribly, and you're the guy standing there, and they say, "Here's the ball."
Right.
And that is your moment that you can become Brock Purdy, the one we know now. But it's not like they watched Brock Purdy at their first training camp and said, "Oh my goodness, we got to get Jimmy G and Trey Lance out of the way for this guy." It's lightning in a bottle, right? But that's the difference between scouting, where nobody who would have scouted Brock Purdy would have projected him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I would say that having read his stuff, nobody would have said this guy's a future starter, and he is. And everybody said Trey Lance was, and he's not, at least now.
You're right. A lot of it is right place at the right time. But furthermore, when you get that opportunity, you got one chance because of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? Like Trey Lance is still getting chances.
Oh, yeah.
Because he went 3rd overall.
So is Justin Fields.
Justin Fields.
Absolutely.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, you can go around the league. There's guys scattered throughout the league where you're like, how's this guy still playing? How's he still a part of this program? How's he still making the money that he's making? And yet, if you're a high-end pick or you've shown flashes, you're going to keep getting those opportunities.
Like Mr. Trubisky, right? He was making like $8 million a year as Buffalo's backup this year. Like, what's he done in the NFL?
Nothing.
Being taken 2nd overall.
Nothing.
Like, that's purely a pedigree
He's
player.
been in the NFL. That's what he's done. He's been in the NFL.
Been in the NFL.
Maybe established himself as a good practice guy, as a good pro. I don't know. Is he there first, leaves last? I'm
I
not
would
sure.
just say
He's Costanza.
He's Costanza.
He's always
exactly.
there.
If you're a Bills
He just
fan,
left his car at this
Right,
facility.
exactly.
if you're a Bills fan, you're happy that you have the guy who's been the most durable quarterback in the NFL the last, 6 or 7 years. But no, there's always those guys. I remember watching a game one time where Todd Collins came off the bench, and I was like, Todd Collins is still in the NFL. Like, he hadn't taken a snap.
That's crazy.
Forever.
Like
It's
last
crazy.
year with Flacco coming off the couch.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So desperate.
Got all over
Throw
the
Joe
playoffs.
Flacco in.
Yeah.
And eventually, that game
Again.
in Houston, it was a disaster. Eventually, it was going to happen, but he got him there.
Got him there. Again, nobody's design.
Yeah.
Desperation creates opportunity.
Absolutely. Dave Naylor with us. You've been down in Buffalo. You're really, you're covering the Bills very closely for years now. Where are we at with the Bills? What do you make of this? Because, Miami's good. Jets are good. I don't think New England's going to be any good, but tough division, tough sked. They're in tough.
The Matt Milano injury is a bad one. Like, he's probably their best overall defensive player, like matchup linebacker, which in today's NFL is like a critical piece of your defense. They missed him for all of last year. They were so depleted at linebacker at the end of last season. And the whole sense is you get Matt Milano back and now he's gone. And the guys who they've got, positioning for his spot are young guys who've never done it for a season. And even the guy next to him in Terrell Bernard, as good as he was last year, he's a one-year starter. So they're going to be really young at linebacker. Safety's been injuries, right? Cole Bishop, 2nd-round pick, injured. Mike Edwards, injured. DeMar Hamlin has been the most healthy guy through camp, and I don't know that anybody saw him projected as a starter at safety at the start of the season. And then you've got the receiver picture, right? Chase Claypool practices 2 days or 3 days, goes on IR and gets an injury settlement. He's done. Valdez-Scantling is week to week. Curtis Samuel's got it. Like, you got.
This is tough, man.
Yeah, and
doesn't look great.
Injuries are such a huge, huge part of football. I mean, it just changes seasons in a moment. Just one tweet, you look at it and go, "Oh my goodness!" But I'll say this: there's more mystery about these Bills than. And you go back to the roster 2 years ago, like started 2022. Look at the Bills starting roster then compared to now. It's amazing for a team that hasn't gone through a cycle, right? Hasn't dropped off, hasn't sort of had to go through a rebuild. This has all been kind of on the run. How much their personnel has changed. I mean, there's one, always use this, you're going to hear it all season. There's one Bills receiver on their roster of the 90 guys at training camp who had ever caught a pass from Josh Allen in a game.
That's bizarre.
One. That's Khalil
That's
Shakir.
crazy.
Now, they got a couple of tight ends who've caught a bunch.
Yeah.
But to have, you bring 8 receivers to camp, 8 or 9, you've got one guy who's ever caught a Josh Allen pass. That's
pretty wild.
How much more are they going to have to rely on tight ends this year? And to follow that up, like, you've been down there, how much talk is there of Josh Allen throwing less picks this year?
I think people in Buffalo are not as obsessed with the throwing less picks thing as everybody else is outside the market. I don't hear that conversation going on as much. I think because of the challenges, the receiver core, it's what's his chemistry going to be like? Is he going to be able to hook up with these guys? Is he going to be, when he doesn't have a Steph Diggs? I mean, there's 2 ideas of the Steph Diggs conversation. One, you've taken a top whatever receiver off their team and they don't have another one on it. The other is there were times last year where it felt like the Steph Diggs thing was almost a burden, right? Like, you got to get your 12 targets to Steph Diggs. And I mean, there's an amazing stat that in the last 10 games, Shakir had more yardage than Steph Diggs did with 40 fewer targets.
Yeah.
40. I mean, I believe Khalil Shakir had the highest reception rate in the NFL of all players last year. I think it's insane reception rate. So the idea is that you're going to blow up his targets, right? You're going to blow up, to your point about the tight end. You're certainly going to blow up Dalton Kincaid's targets. And this may be, like Kansas City, a tight end first offense, right? Where the number one target is a tight end. It's not a receiver. I think that's what the hope is with the Bills, that they can turn Dalton Kincaid into that. And while still having Dawson Knox involved in the offense, more of a pure blocking tight end. He'll release sometimes, but Kincaid's going to be more 66-33 release as a receiver as opposed to a blocking assignment. But that's a lot of turnover, and to your point, I do think you're going to see a very, very heavy emphasis on the tight end offense this year. And Dalton Kincaid will probably be the focus.
Well, and James Cook, he had a big year last year too, right?
Yep.
So that's been a part of the conversation for a long time.
Some dropsies, some fumblies.
Yes.
But
that's contagious down there.
And the dropsies, they don't show up on the score sheet, right? But when a guy drops the ball in his hands on the 2-yard line, that's almost as bad as a fumble. Right?
Yep.
It's because you're taking points potentially off the board. So that's something he's got to tighten up a little
Absolutely.
bit.
But if he can, he had, 1,300 total yards or more than that, I think, last year. And that's something to build off for sure. And I think with Allen, the question is always going to be, how much are you comfortable with him just taking off the way he takes off?
And this is what I think people want to see Josh Allen play free. And that's where, again, the Diggs.
He hasn't been playing free previous to this.
That's free as it gets, man.
That's loosey-goosey, man.
I'm going to go back to the Diggs thing, right? Like, if
Yeah.
he can just throw to the open guy instead of having to make sure that Diggs gets his throws and things like that.
Down the stretch, though, with they played their best football when Diggs was barely
they were running the ball more. No, the most damning Steph Diggs stat is the Bills' 2 games at Kansas City, December 10th at Arrowhead, which was a must-win for them to have a shot at the division, and January at Buffalo. Those are the 2 biggest games of the Bills' season, no question. Steph Diggs did not have 25 yards receiving in either of those.
Crazy.
Which is, you look at that and say, how can that be true?
Talk about the drop, though. Remember the drop against Kansas City in the playoff
and
game.
The one where instead of patting his chest and going, I dropped it, he made the signal with his hand. Just miss me.
Just
exactly.
Missed me. Not my fault.
Not really.
That was as wide open and as well thrown of a football as you can get.
Well, and that's where it gets silly, where you can get into all the, psychology of the Bills and Sean McDermott. Yeah, if Steph Diggs catches the ball, they're in the AFC Championship game the next week at Baltimore. And again, their defense was shredded, and they still only give up 27 to Kansas City. So it's funny. The Allen thing is one of the most fascinating debates because, Frankie, half the people want to see him throw fewer picks, and other people don't want to see, just leave him alone, right? And he
sounds like let Russ cook. That's,
well,
that's
it does.
You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
it's like a different way of saying let Russ cook.
Absolutely.
And this guy is, unorthodox, very different. Like, he is the runner.
Yeah.
When he fumbles a lot, too. It's not just interceptions.
Yeah.
He fumbles a lot.
Turns the ball over.
Yeah.
Call it for what it is.
But hasn't in the playoffs. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fair. But, like, that's, I don't know. That's what people want to see him. I don't want to say use his brain a little bit more, but be a little more calculated.
Yeah, be a more refined player. I think that's always been the goal since he came into the NFL. The question is how much refinement is too much. And you're right, the turnovers statistically jump out. But in the playoffs, that's not why they've lost. And Josh hasn't been a turnover machine in the playoffs. So you've got a team that's problem hasn't been the regular season. It's been the playoffs. And it's not Josh turnovers that have created that. It's been mostly defense.
Well,
too many points.
And exactly. And you think of the, I guess 20 plus years between like the Kelly, Bills, and then when Allen arrived, everything was irrelevant because they didn't have a quarterback.
Right.
Forever. You'd be like, I really like their defense. Man, they got a cowbell back here. It's going to run a lot. And they got this. Didn't matter.
They had Tyrod Taylor.
They thought they did.
Right?
They thought they had a number of guys.
The Bills had as an organization, seemed to have a weird aversion, and this is definitely a weird aversion, to taking quarterbacks in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no mystery where the good ones come from, guys. Like, you can play your luck in the fourth round if you want.
Yeah.
But I think it was like J.P. Lossman, who they took like 11th in 2006 or something like that. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
There's basically, they went 30
They just
years,
ran through a million
never
guys.
taking guys in the first round. Right?
Never worked.
E.J. Manuel. They took E.J. Manuel, I believe. He might have been a second.
I think he was a second round pick.
Second round. And then they started him in week 1.
Yeah.
And Trent Dilfer came on this station and said, I've known E.J. Manuel since he was a high school kid. He's been to my camps. He's a wonderful person. But I've never seen a guy less prepared to be a week 1 starter in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he was.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah. Rest is history for E.J. And that's, I guess that's comforting if you're a Bills fan. Yes, there's other questions, but you still got Josh.
You know what? That's so much of it just
Allen,
comes back to that because there is this sense that, if he has to, he can do things. And honestly, the more desperation time becomes in a game, the less restrictions there are on Josh, the more he's just allowed to do what he wants. And people kind of love that.
Yeah. You're right. E.J. Manuel was a first-round pick.
He was a first-round pick. Okay, J.P. Lossman and E.J. Manuel. Those are the two before Josh Allen.
And then finally,
before that, it's nobody.
Right, we'll give it a shot with this Josh Allen.
I guess
kid.
everyone else is having success.
Let's try it
out.
Let's try it. It's worked out.
You ever
pretty
watch
well.
Josh Allen's college tape at Wyoming? Like it is unreal.
Crazy.
It is he's the same freak he is in the NFL.
Monster.
Running around,
rocket
guys,
for an arm.
Nuts.
They made a good pick.
Yeah.
It was a really good pick.
You know what? And the interesting thing about being around him a little bit is when you play for the Bills, you got to know you're in Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like, you know how to have to play the local sensitivities and the way people feel in Buffalo about their team and their community. I've seen guys in that team who never got that. Josh Allen knows where he is.
Nails it.
Yeah.
He is so much fun to watch play too, man. Like, just as an objective viewer, I'm not a diehard Bills fan or anything. I love watching Josh Allen play. All right, Dave. It's going to really get cooking now, man. You got the CFL, the NFL right around the corner. It's going to be a fun fall.
It's going to be a fun ride right till the second week of February.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Great seeing you. Buddy. There's our TSN football insider, Dave Naylor. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Steve Phillips coming up into the next hour. We'll get to something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza. Thanks again to Dave Naylor. CFL's cooking. We got the NFL right around the corner. It's great. Again, the NHL season right around the corner as well. And, there's still, when I was on a couple of weeks ago, I was waiting for tryouts to be announced, right? That's the next thing that's coming here. You got to let players know, like, where are we going? Who are you flying in? And there's some names out there that, I don't know if they're being attached to the Leafs, but they're going to sign somewhere as a tryout and get an opportunity. JVR could be one.
Dude,
James Van Riemsdyk,
remember
like
we
you
talked
said,
about that a couple
bring in
weeks?
JVR.
Bring JVR home. Hashtag that.
I like that idea.
And we'll get some free suits, maybe.
State and Liberty, yeah. A shout out down there. Actually, I'm wearing one of their suits right now.
They were just thinking side deal.
Exactly. It's a great spot. It is a suit, man. I'm making this suit look all right.
Let me ask you something.
That says something.
You got the drawstring?
I can't do that. That's the Noodles move. Noodles.
He can't convince you to do it?
It's not about convincing. It's that Noodles has monopolized that look on this show.
Okay.
So O and I aren't allowed to do that. Like, if we ever go and do speaking engagements or we go to an event or we're somewhere representing TSN, Noodles has carte blanche for the drawstring. Owen and I aren't allowed to do it because it's his favorite item, man.
Yeah.
He's patenting that.
Okay.
Owen and I have to wear a belt.
Hashtag bring JVR home.
Bring JVR back.
Yeah.
What about Max Pacioretty? His name's out there.
Yeah.
I give Max. He's had so many bad injuries.
I worry about that Achilles all the time.
Yeah.
He's had that a couple times now.
It'd be interesting. A former captain of the Habs, so rolling through town.
Remember Josh Georges didn't want to come to the Leafs?
Yeah.
He went to the Sabres.
Yeah, that's right. He's like, I'm not going there.
The Habs, the love for the Habs runs deep, or the hatred for the Leafs when you're a Hab runs deep.
That would be interesting. I would want to see Pacioretty here just to see him play at the Bell Center as a Leaf.
Yeah.
That's petty, but I think it'd be a cool story.
Ceremony worthy?
I think he'd get there'd be a lot of people that love Max.
He's
there, and
been
they
back,
should.
right?
Yeah,
like
of course.
he would have had the ceremony, but yeah.
Little ceremony as a Leaf. I
Give
like
him another
that idea.
one.
Give him another one. Hour 2 coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.